Good evening, good morning. Welcome to week 2 for PSSL 6240. Just want to start off with this will be your review of week 1 and your preview of week 2. Before I do that, I just want to start off with a couple of announcements. First, Adobe Connect session number 1. I sent that earlier email. It's on September 11th at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You all have the link, so if you're in a low bandwidth area, you can kind of test it out to see if you can get on. If you are briefing during week 3 in group 1, you know who you are. Make sure I have the slides before the Adobe Connect session so I can upload them into the program. So again, send me a copy of the slides and I will make sure that they get incorporated into the Connect session. And the agenda for that is, we're going to have a briefing for 30 minutes or so, 20-30 minutes, questions on that, and any introductions or issues that come up in the class. So shouldn't last more than 45 minutes or so. I'll stick around for an hour. If you want to have any face-to-face questions or issues, please use that time to do so as well. Second announcement, a good overview on the discussion for number 1, for week 1. I think most people hit it on the head or did at least a pretty good job. Keep it up. I think the tendency is that you get lazy as the semester goes along and you just try and write a quick paragraph on your phone to put the discussion. That won't do. It needs to be a little, the detail for most of you did for week 1. The one thing I would add is that we do need to have the APA format in there. So make sure you cite your sources. It is partially your own analysis, but you are interacting with sources at one point or another to post that discussion. So make sure you have that. In addition, in the discussions, most people did this, some people did not. Show me you've done the readings, you've done the lectures, you've interacted with them somehow, whether you agree with them, disagree with them, you think that they're needs room for improvement, or just cite them. Make sure you've interacted with them on the discussion boards in some form or another. And then third announcement, just paper 2 is due at the end of week 3, at the end of that Sunday. So it's not this week, but the following week. So start thinking through paper 3 as you're doing the assignments and the readings for this week. Think about what you're going to say, what you're going to write about. Jot some notes on what you want to incorporate, that paper should incorporate. And I'll talk more about that at next week's YouTube session. And then finally, I'm an informal person. Some people have written to me, call me Professor Sharma, Dr. Sharma. Just call me Rowan. I am a very informal person. I prefer informalities in this class. So please just call me Rowan. Write your emails and address me as Rowan. So review last week, as I said earlier, good comments overall, whether you agree or disagree with it with the Atlantic article or whether terrorism is an existential threat. I agree that death may not be the best measure of a policy initiative because of the things that you mentioned. A psychological issue, you have more of a psychological issue from terrorism than you would by car accidents or heart disease or any of those issues. Whether that's good or not, that is the reality, and I think a lot of people incorporated that. The one question I would ask is, one thing I would put, a lot of people said it was an existential threat because of 9/11. 9/11 was an existential threat. WMD is an existential threat. I would just counter that and just say, was 9/11 really an existential threat to our country? I mean, if you were in one of those buildings, it certainly was. But some people have cited that 9/11 was an existential threat. Is it? I don't think so, and I'll let you guys decide on that. But if you're going to justify it, just have some strong reasoning behind it. And then I would just ask that the psychological blow, the media attention that everyone cited, or most people put together, we do that to ourselves. The media focuses on Boston Marathon and terrorism and ISIS because we want that news. We as the people want that news. We let Boston, those knuckleheads in Boston, affect us because we let them affect us. We let them affect our psychology. We do that to ourselves to an extent. In other countries, Israel, England, they're a lot more resilient, a lot more robust, and they don't view the threats in the same manner. So just kind of keep that in mind. And the last point I'll say about week 1, and I'll send out this note with this YouTube lecture. Life imitates class a lot of times, and this week was no different when a duck and hunter congressman from California, he's committed the classic Washington gaffe, and he said that ISIS was not an existential threat. They were just a bunch of people in pajamas. I think he's accurate. He had to walk back that statement, but I think he's accurate in that statement. And I'll send you the article, and I'll let you guys decide, though. What do you think how important it is? So next week, 2 things: terrorism history, and what is terrorism, what is not. Starting with terrorism history, 4 waves of terrorism. That's the article from Rapport that I've assigned. It's a good article. It packages the terrorism history in a nice, neat package. Nice article. So you can go back and go through the history there. The Hoffman, which I believe is the gold standard for terrorism analysis, and I've only assigned about half the book, but I think everyone should read the entire book. That is the gold standard on terrorism history, and I've assigned the first 4 chapters of that. And you'll go through the histories. What I'm asking is, why groups are successful, why certain groups are not successful, and you'll see, everything from the groups in the anarchist phase to right now to Al-Qaeda in the religious terrorism phase. Why are they successful? What works? What doesn't? Why not? Think about that when you're reading through the history. I bring up in the lecture 2 case studies: the Algerian, the FLN in Algeria, and the Irgun in Israel. These are the wave 2, and these are what I focus on for this week. Just keep in mind these 2 questions: how do they use media? How do they use public relations to advance their cause? And that's largely what terrorist organizations are. They're public relations machines. How do they do that to advance their cause? And the second question I have, and that goes into what is terrorism, what is not, is should those 2 case studies, the FLN and Algeria, should they be considered terrorist organizations? They did a lot of the things. They blew stuff up, killed a whole lot of people, but certainly they wouldn't consider themselves terrorist organizations, and many people wouldn't think they're terrorist organizations. Why should we consider them? Are they the same as what we're seeing now in ISIS and Hamas and other terrorist organizations? What are the differences? So those are just questions to keep in mind. I assigned the DVD One Day in September. My favorite, probably not the best documentary, certainly the best terrorism documentary out there. It's about the 1972 Munich massacre. Just FYI, it's a good movie. It's not appropriate for small children. There's some grisly scenes in there that shouldn't be viewed by small children. So I assigned that. When you're watching it, just keep in mind how terrorism is used as a publicity, how they used Munich and used the 1972 Olympics to advance their cause on the public stage. And then look at, and you're not going to have to dig on this, but look at how incompetent the German authorities were in defeating the terrorist threat. And I hope one thing that you take away from at least that movie is, and take away from this program, is that you're going to be in that position that the Germans were in 1972, and hopefully you are more competent to deal with the threat. And hopefully that's why you're in this program, to increase that confidence. So that movie you'll watch this week. And then the final lecture, the second lecture, is what is terrorism, what is not. And this is always a very controversial point. It's partly esoteric, partly intellectual, but it's also real world. Why do we can put certain terrorist groups on the terrorist State Department terrorist list and others not? People are making those decisions now. Who gets put on the no-fly list? What associations do you put on the no-fly list? If I'm associated with Al-Qaeda, okay. If I'm associated with right-wing extremism, if you put those people on the no-fly list, I guarantee you're going to have some political issues to deal with. So, is it partly esoteric, and it's partly, real world, real policy issues. Real people have to struggle with this. And that will lead you to your paper. So, the what is terrorism argument is covered in chapter 1 of Hoffman. So when you're reading chapter 1, again, think about what you're going to write your paper on. Think about what you want your paper to consist of, what the outline, what logic it is, and think about that again as you're reading the Hoffman chapter 1, as you're going through the lecture, as you're going through the discussion board questions. And feel free, if you have any ideas on your paper, to throw it on the discussion board and kind of mini crowdsource it, see what other people think as you go through this unit. So if there's any questions or issues, please let me know, and I look forward to your posts.